Hey everyone, this is going to be a read-along video for Edgar Allan Poe's poem, The Raven. And this is on page 104 of your book. But if you don't have your book at home, I also have a PDF of this posted on your calendar. And by the way, before we get started, I just want to clarify, these are not real cobwebs behind me. My house isn't that dirty. They're Halloween decorations. Otherwise, let's go ahead and start with the poem. And what I'd actually like you to do is read it through on your own first. So just pause this video, give it a read through. And since it's a little bit longer, here and there, I'd like you to stop and just make a few notes in the margins of your book. Just try and summarize to yourself what is happening in the poem. It should help you with comprehending it a little bit. All right, at this point, you should have read through The Raven once on your own. For the rest of this video, we're going to do a second read through, and this time I'll read out loud to you, and I'm going to have a couple stopping points throughout the poem where I'd like you to stop and take some notes on questions I have for you. And those questions are posted on your calendar. So if you look under Monday, they are linked right here. You've got this link that says first read questions. So make sure you have that open at this time. The document will look like this. And also at this time, please pause this video and either get out a sheet of paper and a writing utensil, or if you don't have those at home, you can also use a Google Doc, but have something available where you can jot down your answers to these questions when we stop. Otherwise, we'll get started. Again, this is The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, and this is on page 104 of your book. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore. While I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember, it was on the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I sought to borrow from my book's surcease of sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. All right, this is our first stopping point. So if you pull up your questions document, I'd like you to jot down the answer to this question. Who do you think Lenore might be? This is the person that the speaker of the poem was talking about in the last stanza that we read. Who do you think she might be? At this point, you should have written down your answer to that question. So we're going to pick up with the next stanza of the poem. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic horrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, or "Madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. This is our second stopping point. So the next question I'd like you to answer is, how do you think the speaker feels about the idea of Lenore being at his door? Again, this is the woman that he was talking about at the beginning of the poem. He seems to think that this person at his door might be her. How does he seem to feel about that, especially based on the last stanza we just read? So pause this video and answer that question. And we're going to pick up with the next stanza now that you're done answering that question. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with my lord or lady, perched above my chamber door. Perched above a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim, an ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. Bird or beast above the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, never spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Startled at the stillness, broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of the bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This is our next stopping point. So your next question is, what word does the raven keep saying? The speaker of the poem keeps asking the raven things, and the raven always replies in the same way. So what is this word the raven keeps saying to him? And then we'll pick up with the next stanza when you're done. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned in my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating over. She shall pass, ah, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. So here's our second to last stopping point. Like I said before, the speaker keeps asking the raven things, and the raven keeps replying nevermore. So we're going to take this a step further now. What things does the speaker seem to think are nevermore or gone? What are these things that the speaker is asking the raven about, that the raven is replying nevermore to? You might have to go back and reread a few stanzas to answer that question. But now that you're done answering that question, we'll finish up the poem. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, Is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil. By that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and in the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie that thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes all have the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming. And the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. And there's one more question for you to answer. And this last question, I want you to make a little more of a personal connection to this poem. So the speaker of the poem keeps saying that all of these things are nevermore. They're never going to happen again. And most of them have to do with Lenore, who's the woman that he loves and is gone now. But I want you to think now, what is something that is nevermore or gone to you? What's something that you feel you might never see again or never have again? So pause this video and answer that question. And now that you are done reading through this poem with me and answering all those questions, at this point, I would like you to go on to the second video about Wendigo, which is the other poem that we're going to be reading today.